Here I am! You threaten to kill me? So what are you waiting for? Stop hanging about and try! You will fail!
Shields up, Ironbreakers, and welcome to the first episode of Late Look. Now, this is a series that I've been wanting to do for a while now because a lot of times there are games that I'm unable to play through to completion in a relevant time frame after their release for me to be able to produce a review. Therefore, usually for those games, I'll end up doing something like a first impressions to give you guys an idea about the game instead of a review type video. However, for some games later down the line, I might pick them back up, play them through the completion. At that point, I usually like to make a video telling you guys my opinions on it, but I don't like to call those reviews because, I mean, reviews at that point kind of lost their relevance, and therefore I call this Late Look. It's almost like a late review, but much more of an opinion type piece of me telling you my personal opinion and my personal take on a lot of the game's mechanics and stuff like that. But it is obviously going to be late, therefore there might be opportunities for the game to be patched, or maybe there's additional content or something of that nature, and that is the whole concept behind a Late Look. And for the first episode, I would like to talk about Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. Those of you who follow me on Twitch, you guys will have known that I've been playing Shadow of Mordor quite a bit in my last couple of streams, and today I actually finished the game, and I would like to share with you a couple of thoughts on Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. Now, we're not going to go into story specifics because, to be completely honest, I don't necessarily feel that even the story is the strongest point in this particular title. Sure, there are a couple of interesting things that happen throughout the story and whatnot, but ultimately, the biggest thing in Shadow of Mordor, in my opinion, is the Nemesis system. But before we get to that, let's talk about what this game is. Like, what is the genre? What are you doing in this game? Well, this is an open world game, and what I personally like to call it is the green skin torture simulator. Because as you guys know, I like dwarves, which means obviously that I hate all manner of greenskins, so I don't like orcs, goblins, or any of those guys, and being able to have a game that essentially consists in me being allowed to torture them and kill them in many different ways was extremely satisfying to me. It was a very satisfying experience to be able to not only kill orcs, but also to be able to kill them in many different ways, as well as seething all kinds of distrust amidst this orc army, sometimes even dominating the orcs by branding them with my special elven powers that you get in this game, which, let's face it, elven powers, come on, couldn't you get a dwarf or something to give us dwarven lord powers instead? I kind of feel like that would have been much cooler. But anyway, just to give you guys a basic idea, your character is a ranger, and he is on a quest for vengeance, and he has been possessed by the spirit of an old elf. Now, this old elf actually has quite a bit of relevance to the story around Lord of the Rings, but I'm not going to give you guys that many details. If you want to know, you can play the game for yourselves. But being this character that has supernatural powers, you're going to be roaming through the fields of Mordor in two specific areas of Mordor, which is Udun and the Sea of Nirnen, I believe are the name of the two places that you get to go to. And throughout those locations, you will encounter tons and tons and thousands of orcs, and you'll be able to kill them in different ways, as well as engage in usual type things that you'll see in open world games like side quests and all of that stuff. The combat is very much action-based. It's going to be somewhat familiar to people who have played the Arkham series, the Batman Arkham series, because that's kind of like where the combat draws its inspiration. You're going to press square a whole lot to attack your enemies, and then at certain points you'll be able to counter them by pressing triangle. I'm talking about PlayStation controls. You can think of the equivalent of Xbox controller and all that stuff. And then as you progress through the game, the combat will become a little bit more evolved. You'll be able to invest in skills to allow you to do more complex combos, but usually the combat in and of itself is pretty simple if also extremely satisfying, particularly because even though the game has been released a while ago, I don't even know when exactly this game released, so the visuals do feel a little bit dated. The game still looks pretty good, in my opinion, and one of the most important things is not just how a game looks, but how a game animates. And in terms of animation, I feel that this game delivers in spades. And you guys know me, I'm a sucker for animation, and the animations that you get in this game, like as you progress through the game, you'll be able to do stealth kills. Those are very satisfying. You will just like straight up stab orcs with a broken sword through the skull. Like, it's very graphic. You will actually just see like your broken sword just like straight through an orc skull. Very satisfying. And then as you progress further, you will get an ability called Brutalize, and I'm bringing this up while we're talking about animations because the animations on Brutalize are beautiful. Basically, your character will like stab the orc twice, then slash his throat, then stab him once again just for good measure, while eventually at the end finishing by stabbing him through the skull yet again. It makes these orcs almost feel like butter, if you would. It is very, very satisfying. So even though, like I said, the visuals have not aged as well as you might like, the game still looks good. It animates amazingly. In terms of music, it's pretty decent. And in terms of sounds, it is extremely satisfying. From the sounds of orcs choking in their own blood to your sword basically penetrating an orc's skull from behind whilst exiting through its nose. It's just all of these sounds sound great. The sound of bones breaking. I was actually making a joke while I was doing the live stream. I mean, maybe it wasn't as much of a joke as a suggestion that the next evolution of this series to me would be to get the Mortal Kombat type X-rays involved. Wouldn't that be amazing? Like, not just you would actually destroy these orcs by stabbing them and cleaving them in all these kinds of different ways, but at the same time, you would actually be able to see their bones shattering and their organs getting destroyed. I think Mortal Kombat X-rays is the next evolutionary step in in the Middle Earth series for Shadow of Mordor, or even the upcoming one, Shadow of War, which is obviously due to the upcoming Shadow of War was one of the main reasons why I wanted to actually finish Shadow of Mordor to get an idea for this game. Now, beyond just the sounds, which is what I was talking about, something that I find even more important is actually the voice acting in this game, because a lot of times you will be fighting these orcs, which are essentially procedurally generated, I believe, because I've played the game before doing this playthrough, and the orcs that I had were different, and as you kill off orcs that are of importance in the Sauron army, they get replaced by new orcs that look different and act different and feel different in general, even have different personalities. And all of these things are great because the voice work in the game is good. And even just when orcs don't have voice, it's very satisfying, because some of these orcs don't even know how to speak, so they will just like grunt at you and just like do these really crazy sounds. So the sound work in terms of everything that is about the orcs is just impressive. And I really, really loved it. Even when I'm just like in the middle of a battlefield and I find one of those important generals of Sauron's army and they're like, "Oh, Ranger," and they start like talking to you, that stuff felt extremely satisfying. Now, naturally, one of the big things about this game is the Nemesis system. And I enjoyed the Nemesis system. It is very interesting because basically this game actually feels different from regular open world games, because you can kind of create a lot of the quests yourself. When you guys might be thinking, what are you talking about, create quests? Well, as you progress through the game, you'll be able to dominate orcs and order them to do different things. And so you can have an orc attempt to murder another orc and then watch that unfold. And then you can also influence what the outcome of that battle is, or you can let it just play out. And you can basically manipulate Sauron's army of orcs, and it just feels very satisfying, the amount of things that are done in that particular system. At the start of the game, however, you don't have as much control over the system, but at the same time, the system also gives you multiple activities, like there's an orc who is going out on a hunt, and you can go and you can crash that hunt, which is going to make sure that that particular orc does not become more powerful because you've shamed him in front of his fellow orc, which, again, is a very satisfying thing. You go up to an orc who's trying to hunt some caragors or something, which are the big wild beasts, and you go up there and you beat him up, and then you let him run away, and he's basically ashamed of it, and all of his brethren see him running away from you, the Dark Ranger. Which is, again, it's something to me personally that I enjoy beating up orcs. It's just very satisfying, and it's, in my opinion, a very well done system. A lot of the times in this game, because I did a full playthrough, which you guys will be able to check out soon, a lot of the times you will find in that playthrough, what I'm doing is I'm creating my own fun. And it's not boring, so to speak, whereas a lot of times you're like, okay, I'm in this open world, I'm doing all these repetitive side quests and all this other stuff, whereas in Shadow of Mordor, I was more like, okay, let's see. Which orc am I going to mess with today? Oh, I'm going to mess up this guy's thing. And you would go there, and these activities just are constantly generating. And then another interesting aspect of it is if any of these orcs manages to kill you, then they raise in power, they get promoted. They can eventually even become war chiefs in Sauron's army, which is, again, something that I find really interesting. And basically, a lot of these events, they take place if you die, because like you're not there to prevent the events from happening. So the orcs who are doing like feasts, or the orcs who are doing hunts, or are betraying, or are executing other orcs, they all start growing in power. And basically, the more you die, the more powerful these orcs become. That is like the basis of the Nemesis system. Now, there is obviously a problem with the system, in my opinion, which is the system does feel a little bit easy. Even though you guys are going to say, oh, but I watched you play it and you died a bunch of times. Yeah, I did, because I was taking needless chances. I wouldn't necessarily always look up intelligence on what the weaknesses and strengths of orcs were. I would usually just dive into battle head first, and a lot of the times I would come out on top of it. Very few were the times when I actually was punished for not looking up the strengths and weaknesses of an orc. And that, to me, reveals a little bit of a problem with the system, because basically, if you keep killing off the orcs in the Nemesis system, sure, they'll get replaced, but they usually get replaced by weaker orcs, and so you're constantly killing these weaker orcs, and they never really evolve to the point of becoming a threat again. So I kind of would have liked if the Nemesis system would allow for the orcs to run away more easily from you so that they could come back more powerful, or maybe things didn't need to be as black and white as you either win the event by killing the orc, or the orc wins the event by killing you, which there are other outcomes that can happen, but I would like it if maybe these were outcomes that were out of your control. Like, say, for instance, an orc would hit you in the leg and you wouldn't be able to chase it, and then it's like he won the event or something, you know? That's what I'm talking about, so that these orcs could actually level up and it could become a little bit more frustrating for you, you know? So that the Nemesis system would actually have a chance to work. Because basically, if you just go up against these orcs and kill them, the Nemesis system doesn't have a lot of things to work with, because you're just killing all the stronger orcs. There were a couple of times where I fought against some really powerful orcs, and that was interesting because those were actually challenging, and they had a lot of strengths which prevented me from killing them. Like, I couldn't jump over them to attack them from behind, and then they would have a shield, so I couldn't attack them from the front. And then maybe they would be immune to stun, so I couldn't stun them either. And that would pose a significant challenge for me. And those fights were very interesting, because a lot of times they would kill me, and then they would progress through the ranks and become even more powerful and more of a threat. But I think one of the toughest orcs I faced, eventually what happened was I did the intel thing on him and found, oh, he's vulnerable to stealth finishers, so I stealth branded him and basically made him my slave. So, but see, that was one of the most interesting things about it, was when the Nemesis system was actually able to play itself out to some extent and create these interesting enemies. And it happened a couple of times. It's just, I would have liked to see it up itself up a notch, like, you know, +1, give me more. And hopefully Shadow of War is going to bring that. So I'm hoping the gameplay becomes a little bit more challenging and there's more interesting things working at the Nemesis system. As a first effort, particularly considering that the game has released a while ago, I would say that it is a very good system, and it is definitely worth you checking it out if the gameplay that you're watching right now seems at all interesting to you, because there are a lot of interesting things to do with the game. Now, however, I previously mentioned things like side quests and open world games being somewhat boring, and this game does suffer from some of that. It has some of those boring collectibles, and not only you have to do these collectibles, but also you have to enter the Shadow Wraith realm where everything kind of feels a little slower, feels a little sluggish, and everything is black and white, and it's almost like the Batman vision or the detective vision, whatever you call it, in the Arkham games, which I heavily criticized, and is one of the main reasons why I couldn't get into the Arkham games, was because of that detective vision, because you would have all these different advantages just for being in detective vision that you'd basically, nobody would blame you if you were to play through the entire game with detective vision on, and I didn't like that. Now, Shadow of Mordor does not go as far as that, but being forced to constantly go into that vision to find the collectibles, I didn't care for that. And on top of that, there are also these quests that would actually increase the power of your weapons that I ended up not completing before I finished the game because, again, these quests felt somewhat boring because it's like, oh, go over here now, kill 5 orcs in stealth while branding 2 or 3 of them from stealth, and you're just like, you know, it's just not a lot of fun. Whereas it's actually kind of a paradox almost, because you have all of these side events which involve the Nemesis system and Sauron's orc army, and those were always tremendously fun, at least for me personally. And then you would have these other side quests that would just be kind of stuff that you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this just so that I can check it off my to-do list. And then there were also the main quests, which some of them were good, some of them were not that amazing. But like, to me, the biggest thing about the game has always been the quests that were generated from the Nemesis system and the dynamic things that you could do with the Nemesis system. That to me was always the most fun thing. As a matter of fact, even though I finished the game, I'm probably going to go back and mess around with the orcs some more, because the Nemesis system is just that much fun. So the gameplay in and of itself, from combat to the Nemesis system to all these other things, is a lot of fun. The side activities, not so much. Some of the main quests are pretty cool as well. I also wish that the cinematics were in-game engine. It's just a personal preference of mine, but they are all pre-rendered. At least most of the cinematics that you watch throughout the game are pre-rendered CGI, which also means that if you use one of the custom skins that the game unlocks for you, you're able to select different custom skins. Basically, those skins don't really show up in the CGI itself because, like I said, it's pre-rendered, as well as sometimes the CGI will also not really reflect the true nature of the state of the game. Like, I can't really go into detail of why this happens, but one of the later cinematics, I did something, and then that something ended up not being taken into consideration by the game. So, yeah. Another thing that I felt was that the game did something that I felt was kind of weird, which is, as you reach the halfway point of Shadow of Mordor, you're going to move from Udun to the Sea of Nirnan, and when that happens, you're going to basically see that there's this aspect of the game that essentially repeats itself from the first half, and you're just like, you know, there is a little bit of repetition there, although they give you more options as to how to deal. It involves the Nemesis system, that's all I'm going to say. Although it gives you more options into how to deal with the orcs and, you know, a couple of more things that you can do with it, it still feels like a bit of, how should I put it? It feels like they're bloating the game up a little bit to give you more content, more things to do, but they you know, they just kind of rushed it, I feel. That's kind of the way that I felt about the second half of the game. Even though it didn't stop me from having fun, because again, it was something that they did that was with the Nemesis system, and if there was one thing that I didn't get bored of the game throughout, was the Nemesis system itself. So it's like, you're going to give me more of this? I mean, I guess it's okay because I like it so much, but ultimately you're just kind of doubling down on this thing, and I see what you're doing. So that was a little bit frustrating, but at the same time, I still had fun with it, so whatever. Another couple of mechanics that I didn't enjoy was the riding of Caragors and Graugs. It kind of felt like an afterthought, because whereas the game has beautiful animations for just about everything that you are doing when your character is on foot, which I've already said at the start of this video. I said, like, the animations are amazing, I love them. Killing orcs never felt so good. When you're riding a Caragor, it's like the animations feel janky. Like the Caragor will move in erroneous ways. It looks like there's frames missing in certain animations. It definitely feels like an afterthought, and I never felt comfortable while I was riding a Caragor. I also don't like the mechanics that involve you riding a Caragor, because sometimes you will have to dodge, other times you will have to press triangle to counter them, and you're kind of always trying to figure out, okay, which one's going to come out now, and that caused me to a lot of times get killed, because I'm always wondering, which QTE button am I going to have to press this time? Is it going to be X or triangle? And I'm just like, QTEs, so that was something that I didn't care for that much. And then when eventually, I upgraded and I started fighting Graugs. I'll say this though about Graugs: the character who teaches you about fighting Graugs was the best character in the game. Obviously, he's a dwarf, and that character was really awesome. I think everybody in chat that was watching the stream would agree with me that that particular character really cool. But ultimately, fighting the Graug felt more like a chore than anything else. And when I finally mounted a Graug, I was just like, wow, this feels even worse than riding the Caragors. So I mounted a Graug once and I never did it again, because I just felt like that wasn't that much fun. So the riding mechanics, like I said, feel very much tacked on, and I'm not saying you shouldn't play the game because the riding kind of sucks. I'm just saying play the game, and if you don't enjoy the riding like I didn't, just don't do it, because you don't have to a lot of the times. Like, there are a couple of quests where you will have to ride Caragors, but there's also most of the game you're not required to do that, and there are skills that allow you to traverse the game, traverse the world pretty fast. And fast travel is unlocked pretty much from the beginning of the game, so navigating the world is not a problem. You don't have to ride Caragors if you don't like it. And finally, my last bit of criticism and also feedback, because eventually if developers look at this stuff, I want them to look at this as constructive feedback. I'm not here railing on the game. Like I said, I had a lot of fun. I want this game to be better, is what I'm saying. So the final complaint that I would have is 2 of the last fights that you do. I'm not going to get into too many details. I will just say that the mechanics around those 2 fights were not that great. And anyone who has played through the game will know exactly which 2 fights I'm referring to. I did not enjoy those two fights. It's not the 2 last one. It's like the third last one and then the very last fight in the game. Those fights for me were not particularly fun. I'm not saying they were hard. Quite the opposite. They were actually pretty easy. I'm just saying they weren't fun. And that to me is the most important thing, because this game to me was just like this big playground that they unleashed me in, where I could go and have all this fun by killing orcs and manipulating orc politics and all these other things, and just having fun a lot of the times, except when I wasn't interacting with the Nemesis system. So yeah, in my opinion, Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor is a great game. I believe it's probably heavily discounted at this point, particularly with the Steam sales going on and whatnot. I've heard it's like super cheap on PC. So if you want to get it, in my opinion, if you like the gameplay that you're watching right now, I would advise to go out and get it, because it is a whole lot of fun. And hopefully Shadow of War can build on that. I want to check out Shadow of War when it comes out. I'm very curious to see what that one is going to be about. And I will be playing it on my stream as well. So hopefully you guys will show up to see that. Thank you guys very much for watching this video. As per usual, leave me all of your comments, all of your feedback in the comment section below. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to hit it up with a like. It really helps out. And if you're new here, subscribe so that you're always notified whenever I do a new video. Thank you guys very much, and I'll see you in the next one.